This morning's talk is so incredibly beautiful. It's about how to define our future. I was thinking how this talk, would it or would it not be receptive to the common man? You know, the person who is totally immersed in their job, totally immersed and concerned about paying their bills, living financially from week to week, paycheck to paycheck. And my answer was interesting. It's so typical of a Gemini. On one hand, I had this answer. On the other hand, I had a different answer. So on the one hand, I was thinking, no, it really would not appeal. Because they're so busy, this kind of a person is so busily immersed in just surviving from day to day that the only time they're really going to think about the future is when they have a glimpse or a moment of rest from their stress. Then they might have a little glimpse of hope to think about, next week or next year. Now, on the other hand, if you yourself live in such a way that you have already defined what future is, then, and I think that, addresses most of us here, then it seems to me that little by little by little, we can begin to talk about these things. We can write articles about how to define the future. And we can talk about our experiences and how defining our future experientially really brings us hope and a sense of continuity, of life. How by defining our future that our present problems and heartaches and stresses and this and that don't prevent us from progressing. They don't prevent us from moving ahead. Defining the future. So we're going to define the term future first. And so typically, in esoteric literature, we have two gears to define some of our terminology. We have the lower gear, which you can open up Webster's dictionary and it will tell you and define for you what future is. And then we're going to have the esoteric or higher gear, which was the origins of this word. So there are three basic things we need to think about when we understand the term future. The first is the time element. Most people, when they think about future, they think about the time, right? This year, next year, maybe, 3 years from now. The second term has to do with the condition of our life in relationship to the future, and I'll explain that in a minute. The condition of our life in relationship to the future. And the third is the more esoteric, which has to do with our beingness in relationship to the future. So for example, the time element. For 30 years now, we have been talking about having a mortgage-free sanctuary. It was a dream. It was a hope. It was a desire, something we looked forward to and worked for. This was to be our future, a future in which we would have a WMEA sanctuary and land. So for us, 30 years was the future. In other words, the coming years are the future. Again, this defines the first term of future, which is time related. We labored hard to be deserving of such a future. Many years ago, Torquem Serdarian told me in a beautiful private moment. He said, "We will be together again in the future." Now, for an esotericist to hear that kind of statement from his or her teacher, this is something to really ponder on. And so over the years, I've never forgotten that. And I've thought a lot about it, and every time I read stories about the future and about the student or disciple meeting the teacher again in the future, it has opened up worlds to me. Worlds. So I'm not going to tell you about those doors that have opened into those worlds because it's something for us to discover ourselves. But I would like to say to this group the same thing. We will be together again. We will be together again. Maybe in 5 years, maybe in 50 years. This refers to the future. Now, the second definition is related to a condition in which we will live. A condition in which we will live. So, for example, to build our future, we begin to think about what kind of condition do we want to live in the future? Well, certainly not in poverty. Unless it's by choice, right? Maybe in a simple way. And I think a lot of people, when they reach middle age, they think about, the condition that they would like to live the rest of their life out in, which would be simplicity. To have a nice little home that's all paid for, and a nice car that's all paid for, and their children are happy, and so on and so forth. After we've reached those pinnacle years, we've graduated from college, and now we're becoming more realistic about what, our potential to live our life is, then we become more simple, in what we want from the condition of our life. So that is our relationship to the future by determining the condition of our life. So that's another way to understand, this term future. Now, the third definition, which is what I'll be talking about this morning, all the way through the rest of these few minutes. The third definition is related to our beingness, I said. Our beingness, our essence, and our actualization. So our beingness, our essence, and our actualization. There is a core within us. And this core that is within every single one of us is our future. So now we're getting not only the esoteric definition of the term future, but the mystery of life is to recognize that there is a core within each and every one of us. Now, what does this mean? This is so cool. This means that the future is hidden within us. This is our potential. It is hidden within us, like an acorn is hidden in the soil. The acorn must turn into what? Yeah, an acorn tree, an oak tree. I know. An acorn tree. That's cute. Okay, so this oak tree, or this acorn that is hidden in the soil, must actualize itself. Similarly, that core within us must actualize itself. It must become itself. It must turn into the future. Isn't that simple? But it is such a different way to think about life. It's a very different way even to live our life. When you meet somebody who is, let's say, 65, they just sit back. Whew. If you were born in my generation, if you were born in a younger generation, you can't take that big breath to retire into Medicare until you're 68 now. And depending on who's elected this year, there may be no Medicare whatsoever to take a deep breath and say, I've made it, I'm done. See, the esotericist does not think that way, because we know that our future is based on the actualization of this inner core. I remember many, many, many years ago when a close family member died. He was 22 years old. He was crossing an intersection in his brand new little MG car. He just loved this car. And a drunken driver crossed the intersection, ran into him, and killed him. It was, a terrible crisis for the family. But it was a wake-up call for me. That was the moment that I realized there is continuity of life. I realized that the whole purpose of life for this young man was certainly not to have him end his life when he was 22 years old. You cannot take the life or the divine spark of God, of the Most High, and end that person's life at the age of 22. So, as difficult as it was to say goodbye to that young man and this lifetime, it was a wake-up call for myself and one of my sons, actually. That was when we both realized the truth of reincarnation and the truth of karma, and how it's right there in front of us to help us understand this mystery of the core of our beingness and future. So the core seed, we can call this the core seed, has all possibilities of unfolding and becoming the vision that is put within it. This is why we were meditating on beauty this morning, and I said, in your seed thought of beauty, you can think about physical beauty, emotional, mental beauty. You can think about beauty of the universe, beauty of space, beauty of color and sound. Even when you listen to another person's voice, is there beauty in that voice? So why meditate on beauty? It's to ignite that core seed and help it to bloom and unfold beautifully. And to learn how to recognize beauty versus ugliness. That's part of our vision. So the acorn symbolizes our seed future, the seed future of our human spark. The human spark, our core seed, must actualize itself and be conscious of what it is. We're about ready to publish the latest issue of Meditation Monthly International. In fact, it's all ready. It just has to be uploaded to the website, and then it will be printed out in hardcover for those that prefer it. In there, we talk about the seed future of the spark, about the importance of future. It's so beautiful. So don't miss that issue. Don't miss the issue. It's a special one. Of course they all are. So the spark must actualize itself and be conscious of what it is. This is the opposite of what happens when a person is so immersed and so focused in living day to day, paying their bills, straightening out problems in their relationships with one another, right? They become so focused on materialism and their problems and their travails that they don't know that life is bringing them signs, and people are knocking on their door to awaken them. In the Networkers letter, I talk about, I really believe that humanity is waking up. There's so much evidence that the sleepwalkers are now waking up. We're living in an absolutely incredible and marvelous time. We want to keep up with them. We don't want to be one of those people that are so immersed in the past and in the pain and suffering of life and working for the credit card people, bankers, to where, you know, our entire income goes off to pay credit cards and, you know, things that are not related to the purpose of life. The minute you wake up, you're going to get those credit cards paid, for example. Your relationships become harmonious, for example. Are you still going to have enemies? Absolutely, but these enemies will no longer control your life because you'll have an understanding of karma and how to neutralize the power of that enemy. Basically, we neutralize them in our mind to where we no longer wake up thinking about our enemy, and we no longer go to sleep thinking about our enemy. We no longer wake up thinking about our bills, and we no longer go to sleep being fearful of how we're going to pay those bills because we are now awakened. And that's beautiful. So the spark must actualize itself and be conscious of what it is. Once our soul becomes the future, the other definitions, the first and second definitions of future, no longer hold our interest because they do not exist in the domain of what? Yes, infinity, exactly. So the only future which will always actualize toward higher and higher perfection is the core within each of us. The core which is beyond all fluctuations, attachments, and limitations to the lower three worlds. Last week I talked about our inner glory, our attainment, the expression of that full glory hidden within us. This is the future. Isn't this a most amazing, beautiful mystery about life? To me it is, because it's not so hard to become immersed in the ugliness of life, the coarseness of life. It's not too hard to get immersed in it. Why? Because we are bombarded with it day in and day out. So we meditate, as a way to help to actualize our beingness and to help remind ourselves of what is greater than our day-to-day life, which is our future, which is our inner glory. So the future which is not related to time, which is not related to form, which is not related to possessions or positions. This is because to be a future means to have a state of consciousness which is not subject to the demands of time and space. See how different this is? This way of thinking and living and being is so different from the way most of us were raised or continue to be talked about. The teaching explains that people of the future can be recognized by 7 qualities. So I've listed these 7 qualities and I'll talk a little bit about them. it is important to learn and to recognize these 7 qualities and kind of put them in front of ourselves. Make a mental note of these 7 qualities, and then from time to time do an assessment. Really give yourself time. I mean, the popular psychology these days, Oprah's strong influence on women particularly, to engage in journaling. Well, this takes journaling to a higher level of writing, which is talking about the 7 qualities of our future. It's not journaling about, last week or sadness. It is journaling about the 7 qualities of our future, and to determine if we are indeed practicing and allowing our core seed to experience these 7 qualities. The first, I'm just going to list the 7. The first one is progressive. Progressive. The second is striving for freedom. The third is a little longer, working for synthesis, interconnectedness, and interdependency. The fourth is really amazing, and it's something that we should review and remind ourselves of every day, in my opinion. People of the future are not slowed down with their hindrances, with their karmic obstacles and dark attacks as they appear on their path. They don't slow us down. That's number 4. Number 5, we are endowed with the power of detachment. This is spiritual detachment. This is not cold detachment. The power of detachment. That's number 5. Number 6, people of the future have clarity of thinking. And number 7, they have the virtue of steadfastness. Okay, let's talk about progressive, being progressive. People of the future are progressive. These kind of people have a sense of striving toward greater achievement. They're never satisfied with their present level of achievement. Such people steadily improve what? Well, the first thing we improve are our thoughts, right? Then expressions and labor. Thoughts, expressions, and labor. Labor is working from the level of the soul. These people are courageous and daring. The future works for those who work for the future. They have faith, and faith is a part of their future. That's the first. The second, freedom. We strive for freedom from the limitations of the 3 lower bodies, illusions and glamours and Maya. It's interesting to me to see, how the teaching maps out a way to live one's life. Not in a dictatorial way, not in a way that evokes guilt if we don't live this way. It is a way, a map that is shows the various pathways toward joy, toward freedom, toward beauty, and toward the future. The third one is synthesis. People of the future work for synthesis, interconnectedness, And what was the third one?
Interdependency.
Exactly, interdependency. They relate all that is available to them in such a way that a completeness of energy is created, which contain three things. The first thing is harmony, the second is rhythm, and the third is melody. Harmony, rhythm, and melody. That's what synthesis based on interconnectedness and interdependency total or sum up into rhythm, harmony, and melody. They are not slowed down when hindrances, karmic obstacles, and dark attacks appear on their path. This is number 4. The future of such people is a source of inspiration and energy. The enthusiasm and energy of people of the future increase when obstacles stand in our path. Hindrances make them accelerate their speed of evolution. Number 5 is power of detachment. Such people are detached but not cold and separative. So we really need to regenerate our understanding of this term detachment. Even spiritual people, even esotericists misunderstand and thus incorrectly express detachment. They shut down their feelings and they are cold. And if they, in shutting down their feelings and they express them themselves to others and other people's situations and conditions in a cold way, then that becomes separative. It's like recently, and most of you know this, I lost one of my dearest, closest friends ever, in March, and first part of March. And for me, it was such an experience, other than the obvious, to get feedback from people. Those that said nothing. That claimed to be extremely spiritual, extremely heart-oriented, inclusive, and leaders of the world, said nothing. No kindness was offered. And then others that said, she's better off. What a stupid statement. But they thought they meant well. She's better off. She's in a better place. Well, how do you know? Others just said, I'm so sorry for your loss. What can I do to help? That's the person with compassion, with feeling, with understanding. The power of detachment. Such people, you cannot involve them in your glamours, in your illusions, in your Maya. It's like somebody will come to me in the counseling session, and at the end of this session say, I'm so sorry I've burdened and put all my problems on your shoulders. But you haven't. You don't want me to take on your burden. I don't want others to take on my burdens either. So that's strictly ego. Such people who have this power of detachment are detached not only from the traps of other people, but also from their own personality traps. Because we all have them. We stand as pure souls. We radiate love, but never fuse with the pollution of people around and about us. We are even detached from our own past limitations. Do you see how balanced this is? We're not separating ourselves as being better or more advanced or this and that from others. We are part of the whole. But we're not letting the whole sabotage our future. Steadfastness. was the next one. People of the future have the virtue of steadfastness. This means they are not flickering lights or lukewarm people. They don't say, oh, whatever. I so dislike that term. Oh, whatever. I don't care, if you are in disagreement with me, say so. Don't say, oh, whatever. People who are steadfast are people of strength and steadfastness. When such people promise, they do not change their word. Now, the teaching talks a lot about promises, and it says, do not make a promise, but if you do make a promise, die trying to keep that promise. So it really makes us think about, what promise is all about. And here we're being told that when people of steadfastness make a promise, they do not change their word. When they decide, then they do. Their dedication is final and their love is permanent. What a great friend to have. Reliable, responsible. What can we expect from this vision? Now, we are told that that vision is given to the core seed of our being. So we have a right to say, what can we expect from this vision? This is not just, sugar-coated honey nut being given to us saying, oh, your future is planted within you. What does this mean? What does this vision of the future mean to us? What can we expect? This is very cool. The first thing that we can expect is that it encourages us. It's automatic payment. It's like our interest from one life to the next, to the next, to the next. It builds. And we know that this vision, which is part of our divine spark, is going to encourage us. This is why prayer, one of the reasons prayer is so important, another reason that meditation is so important, is because this vision that is put in our core seed encourages us. The next thing, inspires us. This vision inspires daring and striving. Have you ever wondered what makes a hero? Yeah, here's some of the answers. This vision increases our joy. We so frequently use Mother Teresa as an example of greatness. And when I had that opportunity to walk the streets of Calcutta, not with her, but just with myself walking the streets of Calcutta, I asked myself, how could she be such a joyful human being? It defies common sense to be among the smells in Calcutta are god-awful. People dying in the streets, garbage. There's no environmental protection agency there. Garbage all over the place. How can such people walk through such darkness with joy? This is the answer. This vision keeps us going upon the path of perfection and helps us become better servers. It causes integration and integrity in our whole nature. It generates psychic energy within us. It uplifts and enlightens. People of the future not only adapt themselves to the conditions of the present, they also have the power to change the present by the vision of the future. So we're not stuck where we are. If you're not happy with where you are, remember you're not stuck. Remember today's talk. We can not only adapt ourselves to the condition of the present, but we have the power to change the present by the vision of the future. This vision that was, I don't even know, I can't find the right words. It's like this picture is coming to me. I don't know if it's applicable or not, but it's very pretty. It's a Walt Disney, little Mickey Mouse coming up and painting the colors of the rainbow with a pot of gold. It's like that. It's like this pot of gold that is within us, that is made of all the colors of the rainbow that are radiating golden sparks. That's what is in the core seed of us, which paints our future. It is so beautiful. So it's a vision of our future. Joy and enthusiasm are always in such people when he contacts or she contacts the future and tries to actualize it. So if you are a futurist, you will feel the power of the future, and you will create certain concepts to approach it. And I think I'm going to end here. I've got some other beautiful things to talk about, but I'll end here and take questions from the webinar. If you have any questions, Terry, is anybody?
Just one, what about clarity of thinking? This was from about 8 minutes ago.
So the question is, what about clarity of thinking? Clarity of thinking is constructed as a result of our soul being able to function in the light of the higher mind. When, as a soul, we can function in the light of the higher mind, we are not involved with conflict, contradiction of opinion, or confusion. It is very beautiful there. This is why we are told before we make a very important decision about our future that we sit down, go within, maintain silence. It's like you pose the question, then you sit down, go within, and be silent and wait for an answer to come. Sometimes that answer won't come until you sit and you stand up and go about your day, and then maybe mid-afternoon, aha, the answer comes. That's where clarity of thinking takes place. So it's all based on having the ability to think in that higher mind. Catherine?
Can you talk just for a moment on what you mean by you will create certain concepts to approach the future?
Concepts are, the way I understand concepts are ideas. Okay. Ideas are given to us by inspiration. Inspiration might come from the teaching, may come from the teacher, may come from our solar angel, from the higher ashram. And then we take these concepts and put them into a formulation that we have the skills and ability to bring into manifestation. Okay. Any other questions? You're making it too easy. Okay, well, all right. All right, let's close with this. Here's some exercises we can experience for the future as a futurist. Okay. There's 5 points. The first is let us try to think about the beauty of our future. Let us try to think about the beauty of our future. The second exercise is try to speak and act inspired by your future. Try to think and act inspired by your future. The third exercise is to contemplate about the future of humanity. That's a bigger exercise. The fourth exercise is to remember your true self. Abide in it and do not identify with your inertia, glamours, and illusions. Maya is inertia. Remember your true self, abide in it, and do not identify with your inertia, your glamours, and illusions. And the last one, observe people around you and try to discover those who are oriented toward the future, who are capable of growing and expanding, and of being inclusive and free from their own limitations. And here's the last idea. This is not an exercise, this is just the idea. To live in the future means to live an efficient, creative life which brings beauty, health, and joy to the world. That's what it means to live in the future. Okay? Okay.